a great many illegal aliens who come here not only for jobs, but the opportunity to have babies, anchor babies.
Talking about children who are born here and didn't themselves break the law. They came here through no fault of their own.
But that doesn't matter. We'll blame mom and dad, whoever put you in that position, though.
That has become manipulated now to gain unfair citizenship. That really is the slap of the face to the Constitution.
Immigration has been an issue that has divided the country for centuries. Since the birth of this country, the attitude towards immigration has been ever-changing, with times of deportation and times of amnesty. But this is not a story about immigration. This is a story about the children who are born from immigrants. The media calls them anchor babies, but really, they are first-generation Americans. They are the foundation for their family, the beginning of their history, the first rung of the ladder. They are the most important generation.
So for most of history, where you were born, the family you were born into, the resources at your disposal, even the proximity that you had to books and libraries determined your academic success, right? And I know this firsthand because I am a first-generation American born and raised in Hell's Kitchen, New York. My mother came here from Argentina. I was raised with a single mother on welfare in Hell's Kitchen. Not the Hell's Kitchen today with the nice restaurants.
That's my dad. He's Google's global education evangelist. And yes, that's his actual job title. He travels the world telling his story, teaching thousands of people that education is the silver bullet. I've always found it interesting how he starts every presentation announcing he's a first-generation American. My grandmother was 21 years old when she illegally immigrated to the United States in 1968. She was fleeing Argentina because of political unrest. In 1966, the Argentina Revolution occurred. A military coup overthrew the government and began a period of military dictatorship. Shortly after her arrival to the US, my dad was born, which makes him a first generation.
Now, growing up in New York in the 70s and 80s wasn't particularly easy. I witnessed my first murder when I was 8 years old. I was 14 the first time I heard and felt a bullet whiz by my head. I attended more funerals than school dances when I was in high school. And I watched friends I grew up with turn into thugs, criminals, drug addicts, drug dealers, and some of them even into murderers. I wanted nothing to do with that world. I wanted out.
My dad has always told me stories of how he grew up and what kind of challenges he faced as a first generation. I've always been able to empathize, but never truly grasped why being a first gen was so important to him. I didn't realize it because my life was easy. I went to private school. I was a swimmer. I drove a Prius. My perspective changed when I met Balta and his family. They moved in across the street and quickly became like family to me.
Every time I danced, I felt happy. I felt a release. I felt like just pounds were just, there was just so many emotions happening internally that I felt like I couldn't see clearly. So when I would dance and I would be sweating and I would be like expressing and actually feeling movement, it was like shutting off certain lights of certain emotions that were too much for me to handle, and would help me see things clearly right after I was done.
Balta's entire family was undocumented, except for him, making him a first-generation American. Just like my grandmother did, they came to America to escape political unrest. While they lived in Mexico, only one political party ruled. Every branch of the government was monopolized, eventually causing an economic crisis that lasted 20 years. Balta's family fled right before the 1994 December mistake, when the peso was valued incredibly low and shattered Mexico's economic system. Desperate, many Mexicans turned to illegal work to survive. In 2004, America's federal assault rifle ban expired, making it easy for drug lords to buy assault rifles. By 2007, cartels had more fire and manpower than the Mexico government. With such terrifying circumstances occurring back home, Balta's family did everything they could to stay in America.
We lived back there. I remember waking up really, really early in the morning. My mom would drop us off at school. She would walk us to school. Obviously, we didn't have a car. But my dad would already be gone because he would go work with the other Mexican guys in the construction, or he would go to the corners to try and find work. It was just a adaptation to this new environment. We don't know anybody here. None of our families here, just obviously us. And so we don't know any English. I don't know how to talk to people here.
You got a lot of reasons why first generations don't perform well in school. You have issues around culture, you have issues around family. I think family plays a huge role in the outcome of how students perform. You know, you have a lot of families who come here and they sacrifice to get their kids in school, and they push them and they work hard. But then you have other families who, you know, whose kids go to school, but then when that kid wants to separate and move forward and potentially go away or go to college or go do something, the family or the neighborhood brings them back.
My parents wanted what they thought was best for me. No one can blame them for that. They wanted me to go to school, they wanted me to get a good job, get a good degree, and with that I can help the rest of the family. And, you know, because I was the only person that was born in the States, I have to not dance, I have to study, I have to do this, and I have to do that. Be this way, or I can't dress this way because I would call a certain type of attention to my family because they were immigrants here. I had to almost be undercover from my own self. We used to come to this church because they would give out free food. And so my mom would put, obviously, all of us, so there was 5 of us, so they would give her enough food for a few days. Some days my dad didn't get any work. And when he didn't, we would have to rely on this food. Food and my parents feeding us was always their main worry, is having food to feed their kids.
You talk to a lot of successful people who grew up the way I grew up, and they'll say, well, you know, what drove you? And what drove me and what drove lots of us was not to be poor, not to be poor. That's what drove you. When you talk about first generation students, or you talk about low income students, or kids growing up in poverty, what jobs do they know, right? How are they going to come to you and say, oh, well, what job? I want to be a biomedical engineer, right? Or I want to study you know, fruit plastics, right? Like, they have no idea what those things are. When I talk to educators, you know, I always talk about how, you know, we can't ask our kids what they want to be when they grow up, right? And so I want us to make sure that we're asking our kids what problem you want to solve.
Part of my mission, and it took me a while to get to this point, to realize, like, oh, I'm supposed to be different. It's more than me being special. It's not even really about that. It's about me showing people that they have their own identity. It's been hard because a lot of people have tried to oppress me. They've tried to devalue me, and they've tried to belittle me because I am different in everything that I am.
Balta is living out his dreams and traveling the world teaching his choreography. But he does more than just teach. He inspires. With every person he meets, he leaves a special mark. He has the ability to walk into a tense classroom and completely change the dynamic. By the end of the class, everybody is smiling and cheering for one another.
Legal, please.
In 2010, SB 1070 was passed. It was said to be the strictest anti-illegal immigration measure of all time. Right after, Balta's family returned to Mexico. They were afraid of being caught and losing their chance of ever becoming citizens. They returned to Culiacan, leaving Balta behind.
Very painful memories here. I don't like this town. I don't like this house. I don't like this place. I don't like what I went through here. I don't like how alone I felt after my family had left, and how after they left everything turned to shit. I went from having my own place, my car, to then having no car, to having no place, to being here. One of my friends gave me the opportunity to come to LA. and stay with her for a month rent-free. But I only had a month. Let's just pack our shit and go. I'll try to find a job. If I'm not going to do it now, if I'm not going to get the fuck out of this place, I might as well. If I'm going to suffer here, I might as well suffer over there pursuing my dreams. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to suffer here for nothing. The thing that I can say that I learned from my parents is that is that they taught me how to survive. That never failed. So no matter what I go through, I will always survive. I will always be fine. And that I can thank my family for that. They taught me how to survive. They taught me how to make it.
Most of Boltz's friends are unaware of what he went through, or what he still goes through today. Being separated from his family and living in a country that belittles him in every way. He looks back, but he doesn't dwell. He's not angry, sad, or tired. He's happy and grateful for his life here. His journey shows the trials and tribulations many first-generation Americans face, but it also shows the value first generations bring to American culture.
I think that the more people we can put into the pot, the better perspective we're going to have, the better view we'll have, the better products and services that we'll have. So I think that having first-generation Americans, into the pot makes absolutely America, right? That's what America's founded on. But I think what most people don't realize is that this immigrant culture is still true today. It might not be in the millions of people that we once had coming at the same time, but every day, today, there are immigrants who are coming to this country for a better life, for a better opportunity. And so I think it's important to point that out, that as someone who is a first-generation American, I can be born here and I can get my education, I can work hard, I can succeed and have the life that I live, is important for everyone to see. I think the path of any first generation is difficult. And the path of the second generation is based on the path of the first generation. If you are a successful first generation student and you're a successful first generation person, then you set the stage for the second generation, and it fundamentally changes everything.
I look at my little sister, who is only 6 months old. One day she will learn about her father's journey and how he paved the way for us. It's not only important for Azella to learn about her first generation, it's important for each one of us. The story of the first generation is the most important because it's the beginning. It's what established us. We are all here because somebody paved the way for us. So I ask you, what's your family's first generation story?